Welcome to Family Addiction Coaching, a podcast about families supporting a loved one with addiction. Each episode will provide insight into a real family's experience, what families find useful and not, what is available in the community, and what would help make their journey easier. Similar to what happens in our coaching service, we'll discuss how families have encouraged their loved one into recovery, as well as their own family recovery. We'll also discuss harm reduction, an especially useful approach for those with no current interest in recovery. I'm your host, Patrick Doyle of Family Addiction Coaching. With a master's degree in social work, I'm licensed by the state of Massachusetts and comply with the strict code of ethics of the National Association of Social Workers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda. I'm a person in sustained recovery, and I'm here with two family addiction experts to discuss what is new and different for families during this COVID-19 public health emergency. We have Dominique Simone Levine with us. She's a craft method trailblazer and founder of Allies in Recovery, an e-learning platform and supportive community for families struggling with addiction. Hi, Dominique.
Hi there, Amanda.
And we also have the founder of this podcast, Patrick Doyle of Family Addiction Coaching. Patrick is a licensed social worker who provides on-demand private coaching and support for families struggling with addiction. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, Amanda. How are you doing today?
Good.
I also want to thank you guys both immensely from the bottom of my heart. Amanda and Dominique are experts in this field of addiction and families with addiction, and I'm really excited about combining our experiences and our perspectives into a really great episode. So I want to thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you both so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Now, the majority of support available focuses on people with addiction or in recovery, but both of your services are unique in that you help friends and family members who have loved ones struggling with addiction, in addition to individuals with substance use. So how is the virus and the shutdown affecting families struggling with addiction, and how have the needs of families shifted? How is it on your end, Dominique? What are you seeing?
Well, we teach an approach called CRAFT, Community Reinforcement and Family Training, and it's very interactive. It's dynamics, it's communication and behavioral training of the family member. And one of the central principles is stepping in when you don't see use in your loved one in the moment and stepping away when you do see use. This shelter in place has caused people to have to live together that don't typically live together, and others to be away that would normally be seen on a regular basis. Families are struggling a lot to know what they can do given these barriers that are now in place. I had one family, I just want to tell you quickly a sad story in that the choices with the COVID virus, mom whose 33-year-old son was out in California, she had to choose basically between homeless services and addiction services that she couldn't get her son in, and him being homeless in the streets. So she purchased a hotel room for him. It wasn't a good place for him, but she didn't know what else to do to protect him from the virus. And she had to basically make this choice. And he was in a room without structure, without anybody else, this just deadening isolation. And he did end up drinking himself to death. He was already very compromised and he died. So, I mean, that's a terrible story, and all of us who are working in the field on the ground are doubling up on homeless services and other supportive services that we can provide people with addiction and their families at this time.
That's so sad. I know that the relapse rate has increased dramatically, and a lot of people are home right now with loved ones and friends and partners that have relapsed, and they don't really know what to do or how to handle the situation, and the resources just aren't available like they normally would be. What are you seeing, Patrick, with your clients and families?
Everyone is so overwhelmed with COVID-19. We get updates, and the information that we're learning about the virus and the pandemic is changing on virtually a daily basis. And it's, as everyone knows, it's changed our lives in very profound ways, staying at home. So it adds so much stress for all of us. And what I'm seeing with my families is that they need to be so focused on changes due to COVID-19 that addiction in the family is dropping lower as a priority to address. And it's part of that, I think, is just the reality that there may be no way around that. And part of that is that I think it's hard for people to get back to working on things that they were working before COVID-19.
I think it's causing a lot of mental health stress, and I'm not surprised to hear you say that you're seeing relapses on the rise. In our work, I mean, there's an opportunity. There are a couple opportunities. One is that this is a good time for the family member to work on the little bits of communication skills that we teach, which are so critically important. If you're in a relationship with somebody with addiction, for the rest of your collective lives, you're going to have to talk to each other. And if you can find better ways to talk, you actually are creating that opening, that bridge to helping them resolve their addiction by getting the treatment and help that they need. So communication skills is an excellent time for that. And the other thing that I think is sort of an opportunity in all this is all this great online meetings and efforts on everybody's part to provide some relief. It's very low threshold. Online work is always, whether you're coming to our site as a family or to Patrick's by phone or video, it's a very low threshold way of gently suggesting a little bit of treatment for someone. So you could do an intervention. You could learn to communicate and do an intervention while you're all stuck in the house, and you could actually start to provide them a little treatment. It's not the best of circumstances, but it is stretching us in ways we hadn't thought of. Well, we had thought of, but of course, I know most people hadn't thought of online work as the main way to get therapy or help.
Yeah, I would agree, Dominique. You've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for years. So we're up and running, and we have been up and running to provide support, coaching, education for years now. So we've been there. We've got a track record of proven success and positive outcomes with a lot of people that we've been working with for quite some time now. So I think that's something that really is an advantage for us, that kind of background and experience. There's nothing like experience.
The fact that you're both already online and everything is set up with e-learning and meetings online and over the phone, and your whole system is set up to help people right now when they need it.
That's right. That's right. Both the families and the people with addiction. You're dealing with such resistance when you're talking about addiction with someone. And typically it's over half of the people that would admit to having a problem with drinking or a drug won't want to get help. There's tremendous resistance. And all these online programs that are coming online are on your own time. They're just a lot of quality things.
It's nice that the both of you offer services that are from the privacy of someone's own home, that they can do on their own time or call when they need. It's rare. It's hard to find help like that. How are you both meeting the needs brought on by this? Is there anything you've shifted or new ways of reaching and helping people during all this?
Just like to harken back to what Dominique was talking about. I saw an interesting webinar of basically how to cope with the stress of COVID-19. And the instructor was talking a lot about finding meaning and purpose and how important it is to have a sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. And as you said, Dominique, in a way, this is a great time to learn communication skill, learn about addiction, and to think through how we want to change our lives, how we want to manage our relationships with our loved ones, including our loved ones with addiction. And that can provide a sense of meaning and purpose in our lives, which is so important, and it can be elusive for this time. So I just wanted to throw out this as well.
Yes, and you might as well do it now and do it small, which is what we recommend anyway. A brief conversation over coffee or after dinner. It's not a big professional intervention, but we get about 60-70% of people get their loved ones into treatment just by suggesting these really solid communication skills, and also learning to listen again to what their loved one is saying to them in a way that helps them to feel understood and heard, and calmer in general when you do bring up the topic of getting help or treatment. We are making our site, our e-learning platform, completely free during this period. We don't charge much anyway, but to the degree that people are hurting more than ever, it's now free until we are let loose back into the world. Put in COVID as a promo code, and your sponsor is COVID-19. I really recommend people take a look.
I really like the approach of reinforcing positive behavior.
Yes.
And praising and not missing any opportunities to offer praise or compliment or appreciation when you see your loved one doing something positive. And similar to child rearing, it's always more effective to focus positive and build them up rather than the negatives, what I don't know, human beings, I guess, oftentimes tend to do. We hung up on negative, try to squash them, usually doesn't work. So I really like the positive that allies and brings
it's
to this
it's
space.
Behaviorism. You're more likely to repeat what is rewarding to you. And if somebody gives you a scrunch on the back or meets your eyes and smiles, you feel something. That's a reward. So don't miss an opportunity to you don't have to make it look clownish. It can be just the softest, sweetest little thing. And it will make a big difference in your loved one's life. And it's going to make a difference in yours when you remember that there's this whole other part. It's not just about what's going wrong and how he's not or she's not listening or, the danger they're in or what's going to happen in the future. It's about what's going on right now in the moment and knowing to step in and reward because they're doing something right. They're not high, or to step away from doing that when they do look high.
Yeah, we've been having some real success. Although this is a time of stress and crisis, it has also prompted some families to reach out for the first time. So, for example, I was contacted by a spouse of a person with active alcohol use disorder, and she contacted me on a Saturday night, and we connected that night, and she had to come up with a plan. She couldn't stand living with that person anymore. There was so much tension in the home, and she needed some help to figure out where is he going to go if she kicks him out of the house, and how is she going to get him into the treatment? He had no interest in treatment. So we had a couple of coaching sessions that evening, and we came up with a plan, and the client was really responsive. She took immediate action. She called a really good treatment facility, a residential facility, local, and lo and behold, she was able to find a bed available. And so then the plan was that the next morning she would tell her spouse that he's not welcome to live there. He needs to get into residential treatment because of the drinking. And she presented it in such a way that he actually agreed to do that. Wow. He called the facility, did the pre-admission screening, and then they were fortunate enough to get medically cleared in an emergency room, which was something that I wasn't quite sure that was going to be able to happen with the way that the emergency departments have been overrun with COVID-19. And then the same day, he was admitted into a really high quality residential program. And the day after that, he had agreed to continue for 2 weeks in a residential program that is part of the same facility that he was admitted to initially. So all of a sudden, in the space of 24 hours, what seemed to be a disaster with no solution, this client had, with the help of the coaching, gotten her husband life-saving medical care for the withdrawal syndrome from alcohol and gotten him to give a commitment for 2 weeks of residential treatment. And I was impressed. I was really impressed with the results that she had been able to get. It was incredible.
And really what she needed was your ability to just break it down and realize what the steps were and to talk it through and to give her the plan and to help devise the plan. That's often all that's needed, that and the right timing.
Yes.
The treatment door open, which was amazing in that story. Congratulations, Patrick. Well done.
Nice work. It's so hard for people to find somebody that they can call in the middle of a crisis like that and have somebody walk them through and talk to them and address all their concerns and get professional advice on how they should handle a situation like that. It's a very rare service that you offer. It's awesome.
Yeah, in all my years in this field, I've never seen it happen so quickly and so well. She was able to get her spouse into a program that oftentimes I can't. Anytime I call them, they don't have a bed because they're very popular. They do really good quality medical treatment of addiction, so they oftentimes don't have beds available. And then to hear that an ED was willing to accept him for a medical eval for alcohol withdrawal syndrome in the days of COVID-19, I mean, I wasn't sure that was going to happen. So it's like, wow, getting good treatment should always go like this. It's such an exception, but the reality is that it really should be the norm. This is what we should be able to get from the treatment industry is treatment on demand at a quality program when the patient needs it, because the disease doesn't schedule itself 9 to 5. It's not very convenient.
Right. It's 5 days wait time to get in somewhere could mean the difference of saving a life or losing somebody.
Absolutely.
The other thing that's rare about what happened, Patrick, is you're working with a spouse and there isn't much available to spouses to the degree that families have gotten traction in this country and the beginnings of a movement to be recognized and to be seen as having needs, primarily parents needing their children to be treated and protected from an overdose. So we don't see much offered to the spouses and partners and other relationships where there's somebody who cares greatly and a person with addiction. So you're a rare find, Patrick, and our site reaches out to people other than families. We certainly have a great deal of parents on our site, but there are others too that need this very much.
It's usually the families are quite isolated from the person with addiction, especially if they're in a residential treatment. I know that my family had to wait to hear from me. They had no idea what was going on while I was in treatment. And they would come in every week on visiting day on like a Sunday and sit for a few hours, but that was it. I wasn't allowed to call them when I was at detox or rehab or anything. Like you just can't really reach out to somebody unless you write a letter. And I can't imagine the stress that puts on families who, had just admitted a loved one to a center like that. It's got to be extremely stressful.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And as we know, the intense acute treatment centers like the residential programs, that's the time when the family involvement can really make a difference. And so the more the family can be involved in the treatment of the patient while they're in the residential setting, the much likelier positive outcome you're going to get. So it just makes sense. But for some reason, most of the treatment industry does not welcome that. They don't welcome families. They should be welcoming them. They should be embracing them, inviting them in and to be active participants and collaborating in the treatment plans, and especially with the discharge plans. I mean, how can a person be discharged to go live back with their family when the family hasn't, in most cases, isn't involved with any of the treatment or the discharge planning? And that's why so many discharge plans fail, because oftentimes the family has no idea what their role is in the person's recovery. They don't know what to do. They don't want to pry. They don't want to set the person with the illness off. So they oftentimes don't say anything.
What can family members do right now to help improve their situation? Do you guys have any advice for any family members that might be listening right now? Dominique, what do you think?
Well, again, I would stress the time is right for improving your communication. And if your loved one is not staying with you during this period, is not sheltering with you, there's a lot that can be done with phone and text and video to keep reaching out and supporting someone who's far away. And we've had success, a great deal of success, with just helping people reframe how they're communicating in text, when they take phone calls, when they should get off a phone call if a person sounds like they've been using. So there's lots of little techniques that we have on the site that can help you during this period. You physically can't see somebody for a long period and you're resorting to technology. And conversely, if you are in the house with somebody who has an addiction issue, that you're going to need to find I'm sure you've looked for it, a room or a place that you can call your own, that you can retreat to, that you can lock the door even and find a way to calm yourself down and center yourself. So this is going to be a lot about you during this period too, of trying to keep your cool and patience and realizing the limits of what you can do in terms of addiction in the home at this moment. I think you can actually succeed if you follow our 8 modules, we can walk you right through the steps needed to have them reach out to some online treatment or therapy, or as Patrick did, into an actual residential program. So it's not a time to give up at all. It's a time to sort of keep it close to you and small and to protect yourself and your peace of mind too, as much as you can.
Sometimes it's just about learning boundaries and self-care and not blowing up somebody's phone. Are you there? Are you alive? Please message me. Get back to me. I need to hear from you type of stuff, which I know can be hard for people not to do. So what kind of advice do you have, Patrick, for family members?
I think the real example of the woman who called me on a Saturday night and she took advantage of an opportunity. She was at the end of her rope. Her adult kids were furious at her for tolerating the drinking. She was furious at herself. She was furious at her husband, but she didn't know how to take appropriate action to make something happen. And she made it happen. And it was miraculous. Recovery is a miracle, but recovery happens all the time. So I just want to encourage people not to give up and not to let it go down on the list of priorities, because taking care of oneself as well as trying to influence the person with addiction in a positive direction, that's always important. It's always meaningful. So you can use a time like this to think a little differently and maybe to take some risks and to reach out to somebody like me or someone else and see what you can make happen. I think it's a perfect example. It's like everything in the universe connected on that night and in that 24-hour period. And she had a miracle on her hands by the end of it. So don't miss these opportunities.
It's a good time to take action, even if that action is minor, or it's about learning or making a phone call and talking to a professional or getting some support from other family members. It's a good time to take action for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it may seem minor, but recovery is a transformation that takes place over time. So it's always an opportunity to turn things around and start that process of recovery for everybody involved.
This should really help a lot of families out there. I mean, I think a lot of them feel like they really don't have anyone in their corner, and it's obvious that both of you are definitely in their corner. So let's take a moment to expand on both of your work and let people know where they can find you. Patrick, what is family addiction coaching, and how is your coaching different from, say, therapy or other family and peer recovery coaches? And where can people find more information?
The family addiction coaching is focused on the family itself. It's not focused rather on the person with the addiction, and that makes it pretty unique. And so basically, the family can contact me at www.familyaddictioncoach.com and arrange to consult with me if they want to move forward with coaching, which is basically talking on the phone, assessing the situation, and helping the client identify what their options are, what their goals are, what their options are to meet those goals, and giving them some feedback on what seems most likely to work, and then supporting that client in making an action plan and following through on it. And it could be a one-time conversation, or it could be a series of conversations that take place over a period of time. It could be at a time of crisis, which is my example that I described, or it could be an ongoing concern that the person wants to get their own life back together, regardless of what the person with the addiction chooses to do. So it can take place one time or over a series of times.
It's nice that you offer a like an on-call, as needed, on-demand help and support, that there's no minimum sessions required or anything like that, and it's a very tailored approach that you take. You're very personal with people, you address their problems, and unlike therapy, you focus on reaching goals and moving forward. It's not so much about the past. And
Yeah, exactly. With the woman who called up on a Saturday night, I know nothing about her background. I don't know how old she is. I mean, there's so much that I didn't know, but that's the beauty of the coaching, is because it's solution focused. It's, what is your goal? What do you need to have happen tonight? And then what can we do to accomplish that? And you can make it work that way. And it's helping them identify options. And this woman who called, she had her answers. She knew what she wanted to do. She knew why. What she needed from me was the support, agreeing with her, saying, yes, this makes sense. Yeah, this is a good idea. Yes, it's not good to have someone with active addiction in the home modeling that behavior for your teenage child. And yes, you do have the right to have some sanity back into your life. And that's all she needed. And in addition, she needed some advice, some feedback about reputable facilities where she could be assured that her spouse would get good care. And I was able to provide that. And so I think that's something that makes my service unique, is that we meet the client where they are at, but we don't leave them there. We help them move forward in a direction that is meaningful to them. And it's all driven by the client. When the client is done with their work, then they're done with their work. And it's all support and supporting positive behavior and educating clients that they didn't cause this illness, that there's no such thing as enabling. There's no such thing as codependency. It's all a big scam. And the person has a disease and the family didn't cause it. And the family doesn't need to feel responsible. They don't need to feel bad about it. And they can gain some control over their own lives, and they can influence the person with the addiction to move in a positive direction.
The fact that you have 40 years experience as a licensed social worker helps a lot. And I think that also separates you from peer recovery coaches and peer family coaches and other services that people offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have the background and the connections and the knowledge, and you empower people to make their best decisions for themselves.
Right. And the way I approach this is that whether it's a coaching client, whether it's a different kind of client, an interaction that I'm meeting the person for the first time, I have no idea what they want or what they need until we actually get into it. And so that's what I've been doing for 40 years. And I've always tried to learn from that and to grow and develop in my skill set and support the client to feel comfortable to be authentic and genuine and open up, and also accentuate and compliment them on the positives of, it's hard to reach out for help. And so I always give people a lot of credit for that. There's still a lot of stigma and shame around addiction and around any kind of behavioral health. So when people do reach out, I've got to compliment them on that and say, that's really good self-care. Keep up your great work. I do it with everyone I speak to.
That's great. So Dominique, what is Allies in Recovery, and how is your service different from, say, coaching or support, and where can people find more information about what you do?
Alliesinrecovery.net. It's very, very similar to what Patrick has been saying. It's boot camp for the family. It's the best evidence-based approaches that exists at all for the families. This one has a lot of science, a lot of study behind it. It's present-focused, it's solution-focused, and it's very practical. Lots of small ideas and suggestions that you can try. And at the end, a little intervention that you can do that gets outstanding numbers, 7%, 60%, and to get their loved one to agree to make that phone call or get on that online site or go to a medication a treatment program. So we do it all online, and there's community on the site. We apply this approach called CRAFT, Community Reinforcement and Family Training. We just made it real and practical. I'm in recovery, so I put a lot of information about recovery and hope into the modules, and I think it's a good, solid, brief training skill set you're going to need if you're a family member and you love somebody with addiction.
You offer reading material, video, and you also have a podcast, and it's very interactive.
Like Patrick's work, it's a lot of questions that help the family build their awareness of what you want them to focus on. We try to be a clearinghouse really for families to come. And Patrick has joined us as a colleague on the site, providing family coaching, providing information about him, and he's providing information about us. And this is the way we hope to really disseminate the quality work that I believe we've.
It's a very positive approach that Allies in Recovery offers. There's no shaming, there's no blaming. Everything is so positive and encouraging, and there's a lot of scripts and a lot of giving people the words to use. And so it's real good nuts and bolts practical learning, and that's why every family I work with, I strongly encourage them to join alliesinrecovery.net and to use that site actively as an adjunct to the coaching work, because it's to think of the words to use. How do I say this to my son? It's one client I've been working with for 2.5 years or so, and that's what she finds most helpful is when I think through with her, what do I say to my son? What are the words I can use that will get my point across? And that's why I refer all of my clients, all the families I work with, to alliesinrecovery.net.
So I think this wraps it up. Thank you both for taking the time to explain how COVID is affecting families with addiction and for offering advice today. I hope that there's family members out there that get to hear this, and I hope it helps them through this hard time. We're all in this together at the end of the day.
That's right. And thank you guys so much for your expertise and for sharing your experiences and your knowledge. It's really been great to have this episode with all three of us together.
It has been. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Family Addiction Coaching. And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the show. We'll continue to interview interesting and strong families as long as there is a need for this information in the community. Make sure to visit our website, www.opioidcoaching.com. If you think you might want professional coaching for yourself or your family, Patrick Doyle is available. Have a peaceful day.